Hello and welcome back to Skypothesis. Today we are super excited to share with you a build that has been in the oven for a long time. The Dawn Knight is our vision of the classic good-natured warrior of light. When creating a character, we like to take inspiration from all corners of fantasy, and while mods provide fun new experiences to video games, we have found more satisfaction in keeping the gameplay vanilla. Even with the release of the Anniversary Edition, we find ourselves coming back to the vanilla game time and time again. This week we are showcasing the Dawn Knight. We pulled out all the stops to maximize stamina regeneration with enchantments and other in-game abilities, and it provided an extremely satisfying twist on the normal warrior-style gameplay. His stamina regen is comparable to the Redguard racial ability, but passive at all times. This opens up some incredibly fun and seriously strong combat options, even on higher difficulties. Be sure to check out the links in the description to join our ever-growing Discord server to brainstorm builds and join a community of like-minded roleplay fans, and check out our merch shop if you want to support the channel further. And now let's dive into the story of the Dawn Knight. The Dawn Knight's story begins in High Rock. He was the eldest son of a wealthy land baron just outside of Daggerfall. Though the family had a lot of money, he had a lonely childhood as his father was always gone, and his two younger brothers had much different interests. The middle child was a brainiac who couldn't be bothered to take his nose out of his books, and the youngest would always be getting into trouble. So he spent his youth mostly by himself, training with the sword and pretending he was off in the mountains slaying giants and monsters. His father did notice and hired a highly sought-after Dunmer swordmaster to be his personal trainer, though he did this because he wanted to foster this skill with the hopes that one day his son might become a famous knight and bolster the family name. The young boys' lives were suddenly interrupted when they awoke to find their father dead. His shady business had finally caught up to him, and an assassin was hired to take him out. Almost immediately, the youngest son fled, never to be seen again. The next was taken in as an apprentice to the school of Julianos, which left the young Dawn Knight with no other path than that of a fighter. The Dunmer trainer took him in for a time until he was old enough to officially join the Fighters Guild. About 10 years later, he was knighted. He fulfilled his father's wishes by becoming a successful duelist, and had made a name for himself in the local Fighters Guild and had an arena victory under his belt. To celebrate, his guildmates stormed the tavern and they all drank themselves into a stupor. In his drunken state, he didn't recognize an old Dunmer standing in the corner. The old man confronted him, chastising his boorish behavior. "You think a few beasts slain in a single arena victory makes you a knight? Stand and fight, show me what you have truly become." Aggravated, he took a swing at the old man, who easily dodged, sending the young knight stumbling to the floor. The next day, he awoke with the humbling realization that the old man he fought at the tavern was his old swordmaster from youth, the man who took him in when his father died and showed him how to fight and live with honor. Guilt overwhelmed him, and he immediately set out to apologize, but his master had already left the city. His mind was racing, and he realized the folly of his lifestyle. He wasn't living for anything worthwhile, and he only cared for the roar of the crowd and the glory of the fight. He decided to leave and start a journey to find a new purpose in life, and hopefully apologize to his old master, the only person who had ever truly cared for him. His path took him from High Rock to Cyrodiil, where he traveled for a time alone before seeking some way to earn coin. There was no shortage of dangerous work, and superstitious locals were quick to hire someone else to deal with any matters involving the undead. It was on one of these jobs that he met up with a wandering Ashaba. The pair journeyed through Hammerfell, where she taught him the trade of killing undead. His soul was searching for purpose and redemption from his misspent youth, and this seemed like a fitting way to put his skills toward a cause that was good. The pair made an effective duo for a couple months, and she taught him the basics of restoration magic. Eventually, he caught wind that his old master had journeyed to Skyrim, so the pair parted ways on the border to Cyrodiil. When the Dawn Knight reaches Skyrim, he is caught in the crossfire of a civil war skirmish. The Imperials assumed him to be a deserter, so he was included with the prisoners bound for the headsman's axe. Before his execution, he says a silent prayer to the divines, not to be delivered but to be forgiven of that hedonistic life. When he narrowly escapes, he takes a look at the mountains and valleys ahead of him and realizes his life is now bought by the divines, and they have a purpose for him in this frozen land. He hopes that one day he will re-encounter his old master, but for now, the divines clearly saved him for a purpose, and he needs to find out why. For this character, we wanted to create as classic of a medieval fantasy knight as we could. Unlike Oblivion, Skyrim has very few tools for those wishing to roleplay a questing knight. None of the base armor sets match the aesthetic, but fortunately, the Dawnguard DLC adds a variety of Brigadine armor, which looks functional and will suit this character perfectly. The locals prefer to wear much more rugged and barbaric uniforms, so the Dawn Knight stands out like a sore thumb. As a foreigner, this suits his roleplay. At best, locals are inquisitive by his overtly formal appearance and mannerisms. At worst, they are distrustful. He earns their respect by completing quests and protecting townsfolk. Slowly becoming the Thane of each hold seems fitting for a Knight of the Divines. He is on a quest to be their hand in the world and protect those who cannot protect themselves. Skyrim is filled with danger, and many lives have been uprooted from the chaos of war, dragons, and vampires. The Dawn Knight has no shortage of work to do before his quest is complete. For his general gameplay, he will switch between wielding a great sword for offense and wielding a shield for defense. We typically avoid this type of switch as you can't see the shield once you've swapped to another weapon, but the gameplay synergizes well, so it's worth it for this character. When you need to heal, you can gain the advantage of holding your ground behind a shield while casting restoration spells in your other hand. Swapping between these two stances is integral to his gameplay. Furthermore, we will be taking full advantage of the unique Dawnguard Rune Shield, which drains your stamina instead of magicka for its area spell. More on that later. Now let's discuss quest lines. The main quest should be prioritized for a couple of reasons. First, the roleplay. To him, the return of Alduin is the primary reason for his life being spared. Fate placed him on this path, and he is not one to keep the gods waiting. Secondly, he will perk no ranged attacks, so you will want to shout Dragon Rend as soon as possible to deal with random dragon encounters. Join the Dawnguard early for the armor set, but everything else can be completed as you see fit. The Dawnguard will be his primary faction, as the ultimate climax of his playthrough will be the raid on Castle Volkihar. He is on the errand of the Divines, and will stop into all the temples of Skyrim and complete any quests they offer. The divine light of truth must be brought to the darkest reaches of the world, so he will have every reason to delve into random caves and ruins to permanently put down risen undead. The only questlines that he will avoid are the morally gray and evil ones, such as Thieves' Guild, Dark Brotherhood, and most of the Daedric artifacts. He is not an adept mage, but his Breton blood gives him an edge in learning, and his lessons on the road gave him practical experience. So to continue his training, he will attend the College of Winterhold, both to learn more powerful restoration spells, and to acquire the skills to enchant his own gear. He will not capture the black souls of mortals for enchanting, but vampires provide black souls, and he has no qualms about exchanging their souls for his cause of justice. One more questline to mention is the Civil War. While it's always a great opportunity to showcase warrior builds, we really struggled picking a side for him. He is trying to redeem himself of a youth spent lusting after the thrill of battle, so we actually opted for the truce at High Hrothgar. However, in your playthrough, you could justify being a participant if you desire. Stormcloaks want freedom, and their right to worship how they choose has been removed. But the Imperials need a united empire to keep the Aldmeri Dominion at bay. Side note, the fact that this conversation is still had 10 years later is a testament to just how thorough and compelling the concept of Skyrim's Civil War actually is. There's a lot to unpack there, and maybe we'll do a video on it in the future. Now let's dig into creating the character. For his armor, he will wear a set of Dawnguard light armor with a pale Hold Guard helmet. Winterhold and Hjalmarch guards also have similar looking helmets, so just go with whichever you can get your hands on sooner. The enchantments will be as follows. The helmet will feature Fortify Restoration and Fortify Magicka. The armor will have Fortify Health and Fortify Stamina Regen. The boots will have Resist Frost and Fortify Stamina Regen, and finally, the gauntlets will feature Fortify Two-Handed and Fortify Magicka. For auxiliary gear, he will wear an amulet enchanted with Fortify Health and Fortify Stamina Regen, and a ring enchanted with Resist Magic and Fortify Two-Handed. For his weapons, we chose to use a self-enchanted silver greatsword called Crusader's Edge. This will feature chaos damage and absorb health. This is a powerful combination of enchantments, and it allows us the offensive power to stick with the Silver Greatsword for all combat situations, even non-undead. It's the most classic looking blade in the game, and aesthetics are very important to us. Everything else is either too Nordic or entirely the wrong shape. Between the powerful enchantments on both of your weapons and your gear, you will not be hurting for offensive power. He will also carry a self-enchanted one-handed silver sword called Silverlight, which will feature fire damage and a fiery soul trap. It's important to only use this against the undead, as he will never trap a mortal black soul. Moving on to spells and shouts. The only school of magic he will use is Restoration, which provides a lot of utility aside from just healing spells. The most important spells are Close Wounds, Circle of Protection, and the Dawnguard unique offensive spells Vampire's Bane, Sunfire, and Stendarr's Aura. It's always a blast when you can effectively use offensive restoration spells, and it really makes you feel like a Divine Warrior of Light. As mentioned previously, he will want to acquire Dragonrend as soon as possible to bring dragons down to melee range. The most thematically fitting shouts are Unrelenting Force, Whirlwind Sprint, Call of Valor, and Fire Breath. Also, we chose to meditate on Fus with Parthenax for the offensive and defensive buffs to stagger. For his stats, we chose to level with a ratio of about 1 Magicka, 3 health, and 1 stamina. Magicka is important, but only used for restoration spells which don't require permanent uptime. We won't need as big of a stamina pool as well, as this build really focuses on stamina regen. But it's still important to Perk, as the stamina-focused enchantments are all regen and not flat stats. For the Standing Stone, we chose the Lady Stone. As mentioned previously, we are going all in on stamina regen, and this stone adds regen to both stamina and health. Finally, we are playing as a Breton, both for the roleplay and the amazing passive bonus of 25% magic resistance. The unique racial skill Dragon Skin is a great bonus as well. By the time you hit level 40, you will want the following perks. In Two-Handed, take all 5 in Barbarian, Champion Stance, Great Critical Charge, Devastating Blow, and Sweep. In Block, put 4 perks into Shield Wall and head all the way up the left side of the tree to get the capstone skill Shield Charge. In Restoration, take the Novice through Expert perks, Regeneration, Respite, and Necromage. In Light Armor, place 3 perks into Agile Defender, Custom Fit, Unhindered, and most importantly, Windwalker. And finally, in Enchanting, place all 5 in Enchanter and head up the middle of the tree to get the perk Extra Effect. We also chose to grab the Fire Damage perk as well to squeeze out a bit more power out of our fire damage. If you plan to play past level 40, grab the other 2 Elemental Enchanting perks, as it will help round out the Chaos Damage enchantment. Restoration and Block have room for more perks as well. Alright, moving on to special moves, which are always our favorite part of each build, but that's especially the case with this guy. The first special move is called Stendarr's Vitality. This is a passive buff in which we maximize our stamina regen capacity by combining several sources together. First is the perk Windwalker, which grants 50% stamina regen when wearing all light armor. Next is the Lady Stone, which adds an additional 25%. And finally, we have all of the regen gained from our enchantments. Our boots, armor, and amulet will have a 31% increased stamina regen boost, which brings the grand total to 168% increased stamina regen. This is seriously ridiculous when combined with the Dawnguard Rune Shield, which rapidly drains your stamina when used. This allows you to smoothly work this unique artifact into gameplay, and we imagine this radiating power to be a blessing from Stendarr instead of a spell. The end result feels like you have a permanent uptime on the Redguard racial ability Adrenaline Rush. His second special move is Battering Ram, which is the combination of Shield Charge, Sweep, and Stendarr's Vitality. Because of all of the regen, you will be able to pull off some insane combos and breach fortifications faster than you ever have before. There is no better feeling than ramming through a battalion with your glowing shield, swapping to your greatsword, and sweeping through their ranks with ease. Finally, we have Bastion of Faith, which is the combination of Circle of Protection, Dawnguard Rune Shield, Bones of Earth, and Dragon Skin. This is a hold your ground move in which the Dawn Knight prays to Stendarr and declares a plot of ground sacred and untouchable to the undead. If you have a staff of Flame Wall obtainable from Dragon Priests or the top of Darklight Tower, you can upgrade this move to an ultimate Sunfire Mythal. We imagine this is the result of the time he spent with the Sunfire Herald in Hammerfell. Though he does not have her destruction skill, she showed him how to use an artifact to get the same effect. And with those special moves completed, we are ready to wrap up the Dawn Knight. This character was fun from start to finish, but really came together when all the regen mechanics started to synergize. We've always wanted to use the Dawnguard rune shield, and this character grew out of a desire to make that artifact usable. We hope that you've enjoyed the journey, and if you like what we do, be sure to like and subscribe to keep the magic of Skyrim alive. We'll see you next time, right here on Skypothesis.